Yeah, Warriors, we're drinking it down. Raise your voices and stare at this town. We're the champions of craft beer sport. Tolkien Audio, we hold down the fort.
Hello, everybody. Welcome inside another edition of the Tolkien Audio Podcast. Mal Robinson with you in the TCA studio here in the nation's capital, beautiful Bytown, Canada. A quick one here tonight, and a little confusion. I guess I should apologize for that. With the drop that we did on Monday, as has been happening a little bit more often here lately, we went a little long. And so when that happens, typically I will split the show into two parts, maybe grab a section that I feel like it can stand alone, and drop that either, a little earlier on Sunday night or save it for Tuesday. And so we had a fairly lengthy chat about the Ottawa Senators and the possibility of them playing the Leafs in the first round of the playoffs. And that was about a half hour long, so we just grabbed it, dropped it on Sunday night. And then to give that a little room to breathe, we held off the Monday morning show, which normally drops at about 5 a.m., until 10 a.m., just to allow people to kind of have the chance to work through both. So lots of chatter in our DMs and on our social media feeds. Hey, where's the Monday morning show? What's going on? There was a bit of a Sunday night show and a slightly later than normal Monday show. If that tripped you up at all, you can find them both at tallcanaudio.com or on whatever app you're hearing me right now. Lots of good stuff there with Rob. This one was not something I had in the works. Little news broke on Monday around 5:30 p.m. that was interesting to me. It seemed interesting to a lot of people on my social media timeline as well, but most of them seemed fairly unhappy about it. And that news, of course, is that Rogers has struck a new deal with the National Hockey League, 12 more years of exclusivity. We'll talk about that term in a minute because it doesn't necessarily mean what it sounds like it means. But a lot of people, at least on my Twitter timeline, very unhappy. And some texts, as a lot of people know, I'm as big of a nerd for the sports media scene as I am for sports themselves. So got a lot of texts from some people I know around the industry, either who've been on this show or have been kind enough to have me on their show, whatever it might be. This was making some waves. And I had some thoughts of my own, and as you guys know, I'm not necessarily overly shy about sharing them. Any excuse to get in here and fire up a microphone, throw down a new edition of the podcast. So here we are. We'll have a pint here quickly. It's an old faithful, one of those ones, much like the Octopus Wants to Fight, that I always keep a couple around in studio. So we won't dive too deep into it because you've all heard it. Most of you, I'm sure, have tried it. This is Life in the Clouds from Collective Arts. About 6%. It'll get us where we need to go today, as we have just a quick chat here about the evolving landscape in the way National Hockey League games are going to be broadcast in Canada for the next, well, this is a 12-year extension. There was already one more year left on this, so you're getting all Rogers all the time for at least another 13 and a bit years when you factor in this year's playoffs, next year being the final year of the original deal, then a 12-year extension. And if that is a thought that might drive you to drinking, well, you're not alone. People did not seem to be receiving this news well. The deal is 12 more years at, and collect yourself here, 11 billion Canadian dollars. Now, good for Gary. He understands that our economy is about to get, or is at least in the process of being stomped on. We have no idea how long that's going to last, but he needed to get a big raise out of the Canadian deal, and he did so. It is about twice what the Canadian deal was when they signed the initial one. Was that 2013? I guess it shouldn't be hard to do the math here. Back 2012, 2013, if you remember, they announced it about a year out. And at that point, it was 5.2 billion Canadian dollars, which with inflation would be about 7 billion now. And he still managed to get that up to 11 billion. So he can go to his owners, Canadian, all this in Canadian dollars. You can do the conversion in your own head. I don't know what our dollar's sitting at day to day at this point. It's kind of been a wild ride, and it's been more down than up. But we'll keep this simple and talk about it in Canadian dollars. So $5.2 billion, he gets to go to his owners and say, I more than doubled it. This one is $11 billion. And it's even significantly up if you factor in that inflation, like I said, that would have, the value, that $5.2 billion would be worth about $7 billion now. So PR-wise, this is a win for the National Hockey League, for Gary Bettman. If you remember, I speculated a month or two ago, and I was far from the only one to do so, but we've been talking about how long Gary Bettman is going to stick around. He's getting up there a little bit. He has talked about the fact that retirement is coming. He has apparently, based on some reports we've heard, told the NHL ownership and their executive committee, time to start looking at a succession plan, time to start trying to find the next guy. But he's also still playing with the media a little bit, saying, I don't know. I don't know when I'm going to leave. I might still be here a while. But what we speculated about on this show a little while ago was the idea that there is a collective bargaining agreement to be done, and there's a Canadian television deal to be done. And if he could hit a home run on a Canadian television deal, and he could get a new collective bargaining agreement done without another lockout, right, without another huge work stoppage, which he loves. Gary loves his work stoppages. If he could get those two big ticket items done, and maybe a little more expansion, we are hearing more and more about Houston all of a sudden. Atlanta's been on the radar for a little while. We've heard some other communities. Suddenly Houston has come right to the forefront. Apparently there's an owner there. Maybe that much as well. But for sure, if Gary is thinking about his legacy and when it's time to step away and being able to say, perhaps correctly, that he's leaving the game in a good place, then signing a monstrosity of a new Canadian television deal and getting a new collective bargaining agreement done would allow him to do that. Those would be two things he could knock down, walk away and say, there, we're in good shape, on to the next guy. So that is one thing to consider when talking about how this has been sort of done in secrecy. And that's the next thing I want to touch on. As I sort of said, I'm a bit of a nerd for the media side of the sports industry. And one of the things that is standing out to me right now like a sore thumb is that no one is confirming this. And the league won't. The league won't talk about it until it's set in stone. This is sort of like a lot of NHL trades where we sort of hear about it from the insiders, and it's not made official by the teams for sometimes an hour, a couple hours, maybe even a little longer. Like you see the tweets from Elliot Friedman or whatever, they say, hearing that the Blue Jackets and Wild are closing in on. It means it's done. Like, it's going to happen, but it's not official yet. So this isn't official from the league, but it is from Sportico, who have become incredibly legit over the last 5 or so years. They don't make mistakes on the sports business front. They were the first ones to put this out there. Stephen Wino, down in the U.S., who covers the Caps and the NFL a bit, he has also run with it. You have heard nothing, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because it's entirely possible, as I'm saying this, they're all tweeting it right now. But so far, none of the hockey insiders, the newsbreakers who work for the telecoms, no one from Sportsnet, no one from TSN has tweeted a thing, hasn't retweeted anybody else, hasn't commented. The big dogs who are supposed to be the guys who come to you and break the news are saying nothing. It's crickets. Pierre LeBrun, Darren Dreger, Chris Johnston, Elliot Friedman. It's fucking crickets. And that is unusual. Now, we have seen, I can't remember the story now. I was looking around for it before I fired up the microphone here. I can't remember exactly what it was. But somewhere within the last month or two, those of you who listen to the 32 Thoughts podcast, which is a large cross-section of people who listen to this show, heard Elliot Friedman say that he had a story and his bosses told him he couldn't run with it. So I can't remember what that was. It was obviously something on the business side, the broadcast side, and they muzzled him. And that's the term he used, muzzled. Well, I get it. Everybody's got a boss. Nobody wants to get fired. But that's pretty weak for someone who is about as bulletproof at this point as anyone in the industry. But this is a Rogers deal. They are the ones signing up the extension, 12 more years. And so if one side of this is going to get muzzled, it would be the Rogers side that muzzles Friedman and says, we will tell you when you can talk about this, or we won't tell you at all that you can talk about this, and it will be our announcement. We'll do it the way we want with the league and the way Gary wants. So you can almost give Friedman a bit of a pass. It's lame, but it's real life. What the hell's Bell's problem? Why wouldn't TSN rain on their parade and say, we don't give a shit about how you want to break news. We'll break it when we... It's not just that nobody's tweeted about it. It's not that they haven't been online. Maybe they haven't checked their phone. No, they're on. They're talking about other things. Pierre LeBrun was on Overdrive on TSN 1050, one of the biggest sports shows in the country, like 25 minutes after this had broken. They didn't ask him about it. He didn't bring it up. TSN ain't talking either, which gets my eyebrow up just a little bit, because if you go back to 2012, 2013, whenever this happened the last time, and TSN had part of the national rights, lost it all to Sportsnet, who got the total package, held all the rights, if you recall. You all recall. You've been watching Sportsnet only for national games for 12 years now. Bob McKenzie was the one who tweeted it, working for Bell, working for TSN. He's on the losing side. Now, again, bulletproof. Nobody is going to tell that guy what he can and can't say. He's approaching retirement. He is held on a pedestal, like trusted by hockey fans across the country. He double-checked his sources, made sure it was right, and said, I'm hearing Rogers and Sportsnet are approaching a landmark deal. They will have all the rights, and we will have none. He didn't give a shit about when Sportsnet wanted it announced. That's the competition. His job was to break news, and he broke news. Why isn't Darren Dreger or Pierre LeBrun or Chris Johnston doing that? Is it, we don't talk about the other network, that game they play where they refer to each other as the blue team and the red team, or the three-letter, or the... Maybe. It might be that. You could make an argument, because this will come up at some point, and they'll all come out and defend themselves in their own way. It'll be a throwaway sentence in somebody's column or on a radio hit or something like that. Well, that was the other network. They already had the rights. We never had the rights. They extended their thing. There was no reason to talk about it. That's lame as shit, because this is one of the biggest stories in Canadian hockey. Where are fans going to watch the games? Fans are interested in that, and you should talk about that. Unless TSN's involved too. I'm just spitballing. I don't know. It would seem unlikely to me that Sportsnet would want to work with TSN. And TSN is sending a lot of signals that they're, if not wrapping up their sports properties, at least winding them down, shrinking them. How many times have we come on here and done a show about another TSN radio station closed? But another good employee that everybody recognized and has loved watching or listening to for years is gone. They're even selling their share in MLSE, which is a cash cow. The Leafs, the Raptors, TFC and the Marlies and, slightly less. The Argos, certainly, less cash cow. But that organization prints money. Why would you sell it? Well, it's expensive to do business, and they maybe just want out of the sports world altogether. So I don't know whether or not TSN would be interested in this. And they're clearly not planning to go away completely. Because when they did sell their portion of MLSE to Rogers, which is a sale that is still being worked through, obviously it's billions of dollars, it takes a little time. There was an agreement included in that TSN would maintain broadcast rights partially, the same way they do now, right? They have... whatever it is, 20 games a year for the Raptors and more than that, or 20 games, for the Leafs, 25 games, whatever it might be, and a little bit more than that for the Raptors. That's more of a 50-50 split. When they sold their share of MLSE, they couldn't afford to be without the Raptors and the Leafs completely if they were going to continue, running TSN, whether it shrinks or whatever they want to do. They wanted to protect themselves and make sure they had at least a little bit of that inventory on those games. So that's a 20-year agreement that when they said, we will sell you our shares in MLSE, but you have to give us 20 years of Leafs and Raptors games. So they're going to stay involved to some degree. And the fact that no one at Bell is talking makes me wonder if, while Rogers has bought this up, and all that means, when I said exclusive a little while ago, Rogers owns it all. They can turn around and sell packages or other games or whatever if they want to. It's their property now. We've all gotten used to watching Canadian teams on Monday nights on Amazon Prime. That was a deal Rogers made with Amazon Prime. Rogers was losing money. It was an incredibly expensive deal, or at least it seemed like it, until they went and paid double for it now. They needed partners. They needed somebody to help, cover the costs. And so they sold Monday night package to Amazon Prime. And, Amazon gets those games, pays Rogers directly for the right to license them. That's why you see on those Amazon Prime games, Amazon is willing to say, check out Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday, or here's the national game on Wednesday. They kind of tee up those Rogers games and never mention the TSN games. That's a partnership. That's part of that agreement. Hell, when you go into the Sportsnet Plus app, where you would normally stream, let's say for me, you're a Leaf guy or whatever, it doesn't just not list the game, it tells you to go find it on Prime. So these two are working together. In theory, it's possible that Sportsnet has bought all the rights again for 12 years, but they have a deal in place with Bell, whether they're going to give them a night, every Thursday night is a national night on TSN, similar to the way Amazon gets it. Any Canadian game would be on TSN. That's possible. Maybe it's more regional. Right now, TSN only has regional rights for half of Toronto's games, and then any non-national games for the Sens, the Jets, and the Habs. They have no ability to broadcast the Oilers, the Flames, or the Canucks. Maybe the deal that Rogers has made, if any, again, I'm just speculating, we don't know that there's any deal at all, would be that we'll give you 20 games of all the Canadian teams. 20 Jets games, or, you already have the Jets and the whatever. You can have 20 Canucks, 20 Oilers, 20 Flames. Maybe that's what we're doing. There are different ways to come at it, and there is no doubt in my mind when you spend $11 billion with the Canadian dollar where it's at, with our economy in question, with the sports landscape being what it is, people watch less and less and less on TV. They can't afford this. They were screaming about what they were already paying, and now they're paying double. Think about all the big names that have been fired from Sportsnet over the last 12 years because they needed to find money. Bob McCown was gone. Kyprios, whether you liked him or not, he was on the national panel. He's now just down to radio and regional. They fired him and eventually brought him back. Doug McLean. There have been other big names, these are just a couple of them, right, that had to go because they'd been there so long and built up these giant, these giant, whatever you'd call it. Like, the longer you're there, the more you get paid. Couldn't keep them. Had to let them go. There is a massive one I know you guys are thinking of right now that Jeff Merrick, just last summer. It's a guy who'd been at Sportsnet forever. Cut him loose. Cost cutting. Get Amazon to pick up the price on some of this. This deal is going to have moving pieces. It unquestionably will have at least one streamer built in. They are already working with Amazon Prime, so I would imagine Amazon is involved. Whether that would be still just one night a week on Monday, whether they will have more involvement on other nights or to teams specifically, whether Rogers is going to shut down their god-awful version of, whatever it was called, NHL Plus, NHL Center Ice. Rogers took that over and gutted it. It used to be really good. You could pick which broadcast and which camera angles. But now you'll watch whatever we tell you to watch. It sucks. Maybe they'll farm that out to Amazon and stop running it themselves. There could be a bunch of ways that a streamer is involved. I assume it's Amazon. We don't know that yet, but there will be one. If it's not Amazon, maybe it's Netflix, maybe it's Disney Plus, maybe we don't know. But that's one way to offload this. You keep all the TV games and allow Amazon a bigger piece of the online world. Maybe you don't keep all the TV games and you do bring Bell back in. And they split the TV part with you. Is CBC still involved? If you recall, when the initial deal in 2012 or 2013 came, that was a takeover by Sportsnet. There was no charity for CBC. CBC, it's a taxpayer-funded, public broadcaster. They just can't go where Bell Media or Rogers can go in terms of spending billions of dollars and still being able to justify it, because you can't make your money back anywhere else. If you also own some of the teams and, you're making money off your cable subscriber fees and stuff like TSN and Sportsnet are, you can justify that money. CBC is a free channel and it's owned by the taxpayer. So you can't spend that kind of money and you can't make enough back in just commercials to compete with those guys. So Sportsnet walked in and said, you can do this our way or you're out completely. And the CBC could have said, fine, we're out, but now CBC has to pay to either develop something or to subscribe to an American show that they can broadcast every Saturday night for 6 hours. And it's not going to be good because everybody's watching Sportsnet. So not only do you have to pay to develop a show or to get a new show in those 6 hours, but that show's going to get crushed every week and you'll make no money off of it anyway in commercials because people are either out or watching hockey on Saturdays. So it was a losing venture. And they said, here's what's going to happen. If you want to be a part of this, we will continue to broadcast 2 games a week every Saturday night on CBC and a lot of playoff games, but we will collect all the commercial money. So it was a math problem. Like I just said, does CBC go spend money to create a new show and then lose money on it going up against hockey? Or do we not make any money in those 6 hours, but we don't have to create a new show? There's something on our airwaves. Someone else is taking all the risk and reaping all the rewards. So that's what happened. Are they still in now? Because the only reason for Sportsnet to do that the first time was because they knew people were going to be pissed. Think about your grandfather or your whoever who has been watching on CBC every Saturday night for free for 135 years. I may have exaggerated that number a little. I don't know how old your grandfather is. I know how old the CBC is. It's a little less than 135. So they came out and they painted it as, we're going to own it. We're going to run it. And we will still, out of the goodness of our hearts, broadcast it on CBC so you can still get your Saturday night games and your playoff games. In reality, that was a hostile takeover. We'll put it on your airwaves. We're making the money off of it. After 12 years, we have seen more and more people cut cable anyway and get used to streaming or just get used to the fact that the games are more often on Sportsnet. Maybe they say to CBC, we don't need you anymore in this new deal. That hasn't been announced yet either. Are they still around? Will there still be a free game or two every Saturday night and throughout the playoffs on CBC? Or after spending $11 billion and for the last 12 years having conditioned everyone to understand this is Sportsnet's show now, do they go, we don't need CBC. You want to watch hockey? Fuck off. Pay us. Buy the channel. Buy our streaming service. Whatever it is. I don't know that that's what's going to happen, but that's another question I have. Is CBC still involved in this? Is TSN involved in this? And is that why their insiders aren't talking? There is no reason for TSN's insiders to be muzzled right now if Bell isn't a part of this. Like I said, Pierre LeBrun's on TSN 1050 in Toronto right after the news. Not a word. Why? It's a huge story. It's all that anybody's talking about on my Twitter timeline. You're not even going to address it? There's a reason for that. I don't know what it is, but it leads me to believe that the door is at least open, that while Rogers controls it all, maybe Rogers has struck a deal with Bell to put some more games or some sort of package together for TSN. And that would allow or explain why the Bell Media executives would be saying to their insiders as well, shut up till it's done. I should say I am a little surprised at how this is playing out, I was certain that the NHL this time, after having gone down the Sportsnet path for 12 years, and it could have been anybody, but they call it the gatekeeper model. We're selling everything to Rogers. Radio, TV, internet, whatever. It all belongs to Rogers. Rogers can do what they want. And if you remember, for those first year or two on Sportsnet, they were showing you everything on Saturday. You had games on both Omni channels and every City TV and on whatever the hell else they do. Across the board, every Sportsnet channel had a different game. They were going to show you all of it. And then they decided, well, fuck, is that ever expensive? Cut back, start firing people, start to get rid of George Strombolopoulos. They came in big, and by the end of it, it was bare bones because it was so expensive, and people hated it. There's not a night goes by you don't go online, especially on a Saturday, and everybody thinks that Sportsnet's panel or Sportsnet's commentator team is out to get their team. This guy sucks. He hates my team. They're so biased. I don't buy into that a lot. I don't love them all. I've said here before, I barely watch the intermission panels anymore for any game, not just my teams, but, playoffs, whatever. I don't think it's a particularly good product, but it's not a biased product. Just stop with that. But people don't like it. And so the NHL came into this with an exclusive negotiating window with Rogers before they were able to open up bids to anybody else. Rogers was allowed to talk to the NHL about re-upping it. And I thought there was a pretty good chance, and almost a certainty, to be honest with you, that the NHL would say, we still want to work with you, Rogers, but we are not putting our eggs all in any one basket again. You don't have to look any further than what's going on in the NFL and Major League Baseball. You got games on Peacock. You got games on Apple TV. You've got games on Netflix for the NFL. Multiple networks, ESPN, Fox. And you do that because everybody can get rich off it, except you and me. You and me ain't getting rich off of it. But hey, I got, I'm an Eagles fan, and they're going to play twice this season on Thursday nights I'm not actually an Eagles fan. I'm just spitballing, you understand. They are going to play twice this year on Peacock. Okay, well, then I have to sign up for Peacock and give them my money, even if it's just for those 2 months or whatever it's going to be, to watch my team this year. That allows Peacock to turn around. They know they're going to have, a bit of a hand in everybody's pocket for at least a month or two. Some percentage of people are going to forget to unsubscribe after the free trial or after the 1 month they signed up for the game. It's a moneymaker for them. So they give money to the league. The league gives more money to the teams. Everybody's making money. And the league can say, what was the most recent? We just saw Netflix on Christmas Day. That's never been a thing before. But all of a sudden, yeah, all right, fuck it. Let's play on Christmas. Netflix, you can buy that package. The NBA, the in-season tournament, it's just games. They're just regular season games, but we put a different label on them. We put the different colored court down, and now we sell it as a different package. It's nothing. It's not a thing. But somebody paid for it like it's a thing. And so it forces us to subscribe to multiple platforms. Those platforms can now make a little more money. They can throw some more of that money at the league. And the league, even if they believe that each of those packages, just for argument's sake, worth $1 billion. That's not even close to accurate. I'm just trying to keep the math simple. They'll say to each of those guys, it's probably $1 billion package, but you know what, Netflix, if you don't want the Christmas games, I bet Amazon Prime does. They're saying they'll give us 1.1. Will you give us 1.1? And so it gets pulled up just a little bit. You get to negotiate with each of them individually and get just a little premium, just a little extra piece off each of them. And when you sell to just one, like the NHL has done with Sportsnet and is now doing again, you only get to do that with one team. And it sounds like they got a hell of a premium. But what happens in 3 years or 5 years or 7 years? Because the other reason to deal with multiple partners is they're not all locked in for the same amount of time. One expires this year, one expires in 3 years, another one's 2 years after that. The market keeps going up. Things keep getting more expensive. You can keep pulling that price up. The NHL is locked in again for 12 years. Now, there's safety in that. The number's not going to go down. You know at least what you're getting. But I really thought, having watched all these other platforms emerge, and as people get more and more comfortable with streaming, you were going to see them negotiate with one TV network, probably Rogers again, then negotiate with a streamer at least as well. So you're going to have two at least to deal with. You're not getting that now. Rogers can do it, but the NHL is giving it all to Rogers. This deal will be done, and the number is what it is. Rogers is now the one who gets to turn around, and if they want to make Netflix and Amazon Prime bid against each other, they might be able to pull that little tiny extra piece, that little from $1 billion to $1.1 billion, right? They might be able to get that done, but the NHL won't profit from that. It's only Sportsnet who can benefit now from that rising tide. That's the part that surprises me. Business-wise, the NHL locked themselves out of that. Now, they also, like I said, they turned down a bunch of risk, left that in Rogers' hands as well. So it's all, sort of dependent on how you want to view this. I'm just saying I was surprised. I thought the NHL would want to create multiple bidding wars, right? Get into multiple deals that turn over at different times. Keep, a rising tide floats all boats. Every time one of these deals comes up, it's worth just a little bit more and a little bit more. I'm surprised they're giving all that power to Rogers again. Now, the National Hockey League is not MLB or the NFL. There aren't 300 million people living in Canada. There's 40. So the economics are different. It's not a perfect comparison. But I think, honestly, this isn't any genius analysis here. The more people you have involved in these negotiations, the more you can drive that price up. The NHL has forfeited that for the next 12 years in this country where hockey's supposed to be king. So I found that interesting as well. Is it a mistake? I don't know. But I'm sure Rogers has got to have something else in their pocket already. They didn't strike an $11 billion deal planning to go it alone. They know something else is coming. A longer-term deal with Amazon, TSN, whatever it might be. But this is going to be on multiple platforms in Canada. I'm just surprised who's going to control that, right? It's that gatekeeper model again. Rogers has control, and Rogers will reap any possible benefits and also suffer any possible losses. So, one last thing on this, because maybe this is far more interesting to me than it is to any of you, but you're all still here, so. The talent at TSN, and this is the part that gets people worked up on the Sportsnet side of things. It's just not a very good broadcast. At least a lot of it isn't. There are people there I like. For whatever reason, we're not seeing Anson Carter this year. I thought he was good when he was doing, the occasional panel. I still think Chris Cuthbert is the best play caller in the game. His partner I'm less high on. I think their play calling, their play-by-play teams across the rest of the country are left a little bit lacking. Like I said, I don't love most of the panels. I think on Saturday night, I enjoy the clashes between Jen Botterill and Kevin Bieksa. I like Kevin Bieksa's presentation. Whatever you'd call it. I agree with Kevin Bieksa less and less often, but I like having a slightly different perspective. I like that he's well-spoken. I like that he's reasonably funny. And I think when he and Jen are on together, they can have some interesting debates. So I think that's fine. But overall, I agree with a lot of people who don't think that this broadcast is a great product. And TSN is suffering more and more. Bob McKenzie is gone. Mike Johnson, I still think is the best in the business at what he does. He and Ray Ferraro, but Mike's the only one still working here in Canada. I guess Ferraro is doing some games for the Canucks regionally, but not on national TV and certainly not on TSN anymore. But as far as their panel goes, I think Frank Corrado is pretty smart. I'm sort of hit and miss on the way he presents his information. I love Cheryl Pounder. Whether she's doing color commentary on a game or on the panel. But it's getting thin there, too. James Duthie is still the best in the business, doing the hosting thing. At least in this country, obviously. But in this country that calls itself the home of hockey, how is this the best that these two networks can present? And it's really simple. The networks are still run by the same couple of old guys. They move around, they switch jobs, they sometimes even switch networks. But it's the same guys who have been doing this for 25 years. So they hire their buddies and they hire their buddies' friends and they let people just post up and stay for a long time, whether they're any good or not. And nothing new happens. I don't want this to be self-serving because I don't believe for even half a second that I would be any good at any of these jobs. So I'm not saying, look at all of us out here doing great work. But there are other podcasts, hockey-specific podcasts, where people are doing brilliant work that would bring energy to a panel. Like if you're doing a Leafs regional game, why wouldn't you give Dangle a shot? Like those sorts of people who do it a different way, who come off a little bit. And I'm not trying to focus in on just the Leafs, whatever. Every market has them. You're listening to this in Ottawa. You have a favorite Sens podcast or two. I'm sure you think at least one of the guys you listen to is really bright and would do really well on one of their panels. I don't need to name names for you. You got somebody. But in this hockey mad country, where people are out doing their YouTube channels and their podcasts and their writing gigs, why does nobody break through? Go, like, honestly, think in your head of the last young, up-and-coming broadcast person to land on one of those panels, to land on a play-by-play. It's probably Kenzie Lalonde, and that's probably it. That's brutal. And part of the problem is there's nowhere to get better. It's not dissimilar to sports. You keep closing down sports radio stations, there's more and more people who don't get the chance to go on and talk every day and get comfortable on a microphone in front of an audience. You stop having Sportsline every night at 11:30 in Winnipeg, in Edmonton, in whatever, on A Channel, wherever it might have been. The local, whatever it might be, CTV Lethbridge, CBC Medicine Hat. You keep closing these stations. People who are just going out and doing a local news broadcast at 6 p.m., those jobs are gone. People don't, A, get the chance to have their reps and do better and get better, and they also don't have anywhere to get noticed. So it's hard. But if you sit and think about how long you've been watching the same faces every year on both networks for as long as I can remember, who's the last guy who came up, looks like he's probably 27, 28 years old, and gets a shot at play-by-play or on a panel or hosting somewhere? And I'm not even saying everybody doing the job right now is bad. I'm certainly not. Some of them are very good. But your guys and so again, I don't want this to come off like I'm naming people who should go. But think about what you see Dan Murphy in Vancouver, right? Gene Principe in Edmonton. These people, every team has them working. I guess Claire Hanna would be another one who has broken through and is one of those next younger generation who is making it happen. But those guys that I mentioned who've been doing that job as rinkside host in Edmonton, in Vancouver, in Toronto, in wherever, those are guys who've been there for 20, 25 years. There is no 26-year-old doing the job. This product on Sportsnet and on TSN is stale. And you got to find some of these young people who are doing this in other ways across the country. Great TikToks or whatever. And I say that with a bit of a snicker myself because I'm a 40-year-old white guy who doesn't care about TikTok. But these people have millions or hundreds of thousands of followers. People do care. Give somebody new a shot. That's sort of a tangent I didn't expect to end up on tonight. But that is part of the reason these broadcasts are so stale. It's the same thing over and over. I can remember watching Kelly Rudy doing these games in 1998 on CBC behind the mask during the first intermission of games where Don Cherry wasn't doing first intermission. I'm not trying to rip on Kelly. I'm just saying it's been almost 30 years. And he's still doing the same job. A little turnover wouldn't hurt. The point I wanted to make was if TSN is not a part of this, if there's another reason their insiders are so quiet and they are going to be left out in the cold again, They will continue with their couple of regional teams, like I said, the Jets, the Leafs, the Sens, and the Habs. But they won't have any playoff games. They won't have all-star games. They won't have national games on Wednesdays or Saturdays or whatever it is. If they're going to be left out in the cold again, I wonder how many people who stayed loyal last time and didn't jump to TSN or to Sportsnet from TSN jump this time. Maybe you held out a little hope that, hey, the next time around, it'll come back to us, and I'm happy here. It's obviously not. You just put another 12 years on the... That's 24 total years. How many broadcasters that aren't named Kelly Rudy have 24 years of their career that they can just wait and go, yeah, I guess I just won't call playoff games anymore? That's why Chris Cuthbert jumped. He was one of the big guys on TSN. He worked it into his contract when he jumped to Sportsnet. I want to be a guy who calls Stanley Cup final games. And Sportsnet had nobody better than him and obviously gave him that, and I think he's done well with it. Your mileage may vary. I think he does a good job. But that's why he went. That was years later, because he didn't jump till about 2020. But James Duthie didn't jump last time. Said, I'm happy here on TSN. And they sort of turned him into their Bob Costas, right? He stopped being just the hockey guy. Guy goes to the Super Bowl, goes to the Masters, does CFL. He's kind of their big event guy, the face of the network. I'm not sure he would jump even now because they're still going to have a lot of those. But would a Gord Miller go? Would a Mike Johnson go and say, look, I don't know how long I want to sit here and not call playoff games and not be a part of the biggest event. You know, Sportsnet owning all of the national rights doesn't just mean that they hold all the Stanley Cup. They got first dibs on the World Cup, the Four Nations thing we just did. Any other new events that keep popping up, it's all first right of refusal to Sportsnet. So anything big coming down the pipe, these guys miss out on. They were loyal last time, stayed with TSN, still had the World Juniors and the World Championships, you know, still had some regional games. But we just put another 12 years on the clock. It ain't coming back to Bell to have control over. I wonder if some of those guys who've been there a long time, you know, maybe consider it this time. Maybe I should go. Maybe I should jump. Now, everybody's contract comes up at a different time. They're not all tied to exactly when this big overall national rights deal comes. But I don't know. Mike Johnson, as I said a few minutes ago, I believe is the best in the business at the in-game color commentary. They could stand to replace Craig Simpson on Sportsnet, and Mike Johnson could walk right into that job, do a fantastic job, make everybody happy, most people happy. Nobody makes everybody happy. You know, as the playoffs roll on, and be the guy on the main network during the biggest games and during the Stanley Cup finals and things like that. That crossed my mind as well. I don't know how long TSN is going to remain in its current form, but we do know how long it's going to be before they see major events again on their network. So maybe I'm feeling slightly less secure about my job if I'm watching TSN shrink and shrink and shrink, and I know the biggest things aren't going to happen on my network. Those two things might be enough to make a Gord Miller move to the other side, to make a Mike Johnson move to the other side. I don't know. I haven't spoken to anybody. These people are nice enough to come on the podcast now and then. They rarely text me for career advice, which seems reasonable, I suppose. I've ended up talking about this a lot longer than I thought I would. It's pretty obvious. Bit of a nerd for the media shit. It's a big deal. And by the time I turn off this microphone, maybe all the TSN insiders have already tweeted about this, making half of this show useless. But there is a reason they didn't right away, and I wonder if that means Bell is tied into this. But there will be interesting wrinkles to this. Sportico suggests that this will be voted on by the Board of Governors for the NHL later this week, most likely. So you can only keep your head in the sand for so long. Reporters are going to have to start talking about this. So we'll see. No doubt, as the news comes out and we learn more about this, we will find out who they are partnering with, who's going to be a part of their streaming family, their network family. We'll see. Is CBC still in? Like I said, that's oddly interesting to me. But that will all come out in the coming days, if it hasn't while I was sitting here doing this already, which would be irritating to me. Hope this hasn't been overly irritating to you. Like I said, though, if it has been, it's kind of on you. You can hit stop at any time. Don't do that, though. Stay here. Subscribe to the pod. Like I said, 2 episodes with Rob came out in the last 36 hours or so, Monday morning at 10 a.m. and Sunday evening after the Sens game. So 2 of those up right now. If you missed either one, go back and check that out. We're going to talk to Matt Gonis-Vita here over the next day or two. Stay tuned for that. Dan Schulman coming up next week. All kinds of good stuff still to come on the Tall Can Audio podcast. We hope you will stay tuned for all of it. Thanks for checking this one out. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it gave you a little bit of something to think about, or I don't know, something to just pass the time while you were out doing whatever you were doing. That's another edition of the Tall Can Audio podcast. We're done, and we'll see you next time.
Yo, Can Warriors are drinking it down. Raise your voices and stare at this town. We're the champions of craft beer and sport. Tall Can Audio, we hold down the fort. Tall Can Warriors, we drinking it